I arrived in the city with nothing but a worn-out backpack, an old journal filled with scribbled dreams, and the kind of hunger that isn't about food, but about proving the world wrong. The train had barely stopped moving when I stepped onto the platform. No one was waiting for me. No friendly face. No hand to hold. Just the hum of a place that didn't know me, and didn't care to. I wasn't afraid. Not because I was brave, but because I had nothing left to lose. My name is Ayaan Malik. 26. No degree. No family to lean on. Just a promise I made to myself the night my stepfather kicked me out. One day, I'll become someone you regret letting go. I slept my first night in this city on a bench under a streetlight that flickered like it couldn't make up its mind. I had 43 rupees in my wallet, an almost dead phone, and a heart full of memories that hurt more than hunger. But what I didn't know then was that night would lead me to her. Zara Khalid. She had no idea who I was. And yet, she would become the fire that lit my will and the reason I fought like hell to rebuild my life. Zara ran a tiny bookstore cafe tucked between two glass towers in downtown Karachi. I wasn't looking for work that morning. I was just looking for warmth. The help wanted sign wasn't even up. But I saw her wiping tables in jeans and a white kurta, humming under her breath, headphones in. She looked like the kind of woman who read poetry at midnight and argued about soulmates like it was science. I didn't know why, but something in me said, talk to her. So I did. She looked up from the counter, paused her music and narrowed her eyes. You okay? She asked. Not really, I replied, smiling despite the ache in my stomach. But I'm trying to be. That was the first time I saw her soften. Zara didn't give me a job right away, but she did offer me coffee and a free sandwich. I sat in the corner that day, watching the city move through the glass like life outside a movie. The cafe played old Kishore songs. A little girl in uniform came to read after school. A couple argued in whispers near the shelves. It was a small world, but it felt safe. Over the next few days I kept showing up. Sometimes just for water. Sometimes for the quiet. And Zara. Well, she never asked me to leave. One night, a waiter quit on the spot, and Zara sighed so loud I almost laughed. Still need help? I asked, standing with my sleeves rolled. She smirked. You wash dishes? I wash dreams too if you pay me. That's how I became part of her world. Zara was the kind of woman who believed in second chances, but never gave them easily. She asked tough questions. Why are you really here? What are you running from? What do you want from life, Ayaan? I didn't have answers. At least not then. But with every passing day, I found myself craving more than just her approval. I wanted to be worthy of the world she lived in. Zara had scars too, though she hid them well. Her mother had left when she was 10. Her father drank silence for dinner. She built her business from scratch with one loan and 100 nights of doubt. We were both broken. But we were learning how to rebuild. Together. One rainy evening we closed the shop early. The streets glistened like spilled ink and the air smelled of chai and wet earth. Inside it was just the two of us, dim lights, soft jazz, and two people pretending they weren't falling slowly, deeply, helplessly. She sat on the counter swinging her legs, staring at me like she could read my thoughts. You ever think about the past? She asked. Every day. Does it hurt? Not as much when I'm here. She smiled. You talk like a writer. Maybe I am. She leaned closer, eyes catching the low light. Then write something about us. I stared at her for a long second, and maybe it was the rain or the silence, or just the way she looked at me like I was something more than I believed, but I took her hand. I'd write, I whispered, that I came with nothing but found everything when I met you. And then, just as I thought she'd pull away, she didn't. She let her fingers curl into mine as if saying I feel it too. But happy moments have shadows. The more I built myself in her cafe, the more the world tried to remind me where I came from. Old debts. Cousin I owed money to. A boss from a past job who accused me of stealing when I never did. And worst of all, my stepfather showing up one evening asking for help. Zara overheard part of it. She heard him call me a liar and a fraud. And when I turned around to explain, she was gone. For the first time since I came to the city, I felt cold again. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stood outside the cafe in the rain, hoping she'd come back. That I'd see the light upstairs turn on. that I could explain everything, how I was never the villain they said I was. But morning came, and Zara didn't. All she left was a note under the cafe door. It read, "Trust is fragile, Ayan. And so is my heart. I need time." And that's how the story begins. Not with a love that was easy, not with success that came fast, but with a boy who had nothing but truth in his eyes, fighting to right a destiny no one believed he deserved. I lost her that night, but I wasn't going to lose myself again. Zara didn't come to the cafe for 3 days. The place felt hollow without her. Even the music sounded different. Empty notes in the corners of a space that used to hum with purpose. I still came in early, swept the floor, baked the morning batch of cookies the way she taught me, even though I burned the first tray. I didn't stop hoping she'd walk in. And yet, the silence was louder than anything I'd ever known. They say people break in 2 ways. Slowly like a river carving stone, or suddenly like a glass slipping from your hand. Zara was both. Beneath her steady strength she carried storms. She trusted very few, and I had become one of them, until that trust cracked. And now she was gone. I spent those 3 days remembering everything she never said but always meant. Like the way her fingers curled around her coffee mug when she was anxious. Or how she stared too long at the customer who resembled her mom. Or the way she never talked about love, only loss. One night, I sat in the back room where we once fixed the broken espresso machine together, and found a half-read letter beneath a stack of invoices. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it was her handwriting. If I let someone in, they might leave. If I push them away, at least I know why they're gone. She was scared, just like me. I hadn't always been alone. Before life broke in, I had a mother who called me her lion. I had a younger sister who used to sneak mango slices into my school bag. But one day she died in a bus crash. My mom stopped singing after that. And my stepfather started drinking more. He blamed me for everything. Called me cursed. Told me I'd never become anything more than a burden. He wasn't a monster in the movies. He was the kind of monster who smiled at neighbors and then slammed doors behind them. The kind that makes you doubt your own worth. Zara's father was quieter in his cruelty. A man who expected everything but gave nothing. She told me once, under the amber glow of our cafe's rooftop string lights. He taught me how to build a business, but never how to trust a man. We came from different kinds of broken. But broken is broken. And love doesn't care how the cracks got there. It only wants to fill them. On the 4th morning, the cafe bell rang, and for a second my breath caught. It wasn't Zara. It was Saad, her business partner. Polished, sharp-suited, and suspicious of me since day one. "Where is she?" I asked, wiping my hands on an apron. "She's staying with her aunt in Lahore." "Needed space," he said. His voice was clipped, as if explaining a delay in delivery. Not someone's absence. She didn't call. Saad crossed his arms. "You want honesty? I told her you weren't worth this. She didn't listen. Now she's paying for it." I stepped forward, anger rising in my throat. "You don't know me." "No," he said coldly. "But I know your type." I almost walked out that day. Almost gave up. But I remembered Zara's voice. The one that said, "Don't let them define you." So I stayed. I cleaned the tables. I ran the register. And every night I wrote in that old journal I'd brought from home. Pages filled with pain, progress, and prayers. 'Cause I wasn't just working anymore. I was building something. Not just for me but for her. One rainy afternoon, just like the day she left, I got a message. From an unknown number. "Are you still there?" My hands trembled as I typed. "Always." It was her. But that was all she said. She didn't reply again for 2 more days. Meanwhile, word of the cafe began to spread. An influencer posted about our masala chai. A retired professor left us a 5-star Google review, calling it a haven for broken poets. We were still a small cafe, but we mattered. And people started asking, "Where's the girl with the long braid who laughs like wind chimes?" I'd just smile and say, "She'll be back," even if I didn't believe it. Then one night she returned. It was close to closing. I was wiping the windows when I saw her reflection beside mine. She wore black. Her hair loose. Eyes tired. But she was here. I turned slowly. Our eyes met. Everything I wanted to say died in my throat. She stepped forward, hesitated, then placed her hand on the counter, where I used to sit on my first days. I've been scared my whole life, she whispered. I nodded. Me too. She looked down then back up. But I never met someone who fought for me without asking for anything in return. My heart cracked open like the first light of dawn. I'm not asking now either, I said softly. Just stay. Zara stepped behind the counter, stood beside me, and for the first time in weeks it felt right again. But before I could ask her anything, the front door opened again. It was a stranger, or so I thought, until Zara froze. The man had thick silver hair, a scar above his brow, and a gaze that cut through the room. Zara, he said. She stiffened. Abba. I stepped back instinctively. Her father. He hadn't spoken to her in over 3 years. And now he stood in our cafe like nothing had happened. I heard you were running this place alone, he said. That's not safe. Zara crossed her arms. It's mine. I built it. He looked at me, then back at her. With help from strangers? I opened my mouth but she cut in. He's not a stranger. The room went quiet. Her father stepped closer. What do you even know about him? Where he's from? What he's done? Zara's voice didn't waver. Enough to know he's more honest than anyone I've ever met. He scoffed. You always were foolish. That's when I spoke. With respect, sir, I said. You don't get to walk back in and act like you never left. Zara looked at me grateful, but nervous. Her father said nothing, just turned and walked out. But he left a storm behind. After he left, I found Zara in the back room, staring at a photo of her as a child with her parents. I used to believe he left because I wasn't enough, she said. You were too much, I whispered. Too bright for a man who couldn't stand the light. She didn't cry. She just leaned against me, head on my shoulder, and said, I'm tired of running. Then let's stop, I said. Together. But peace never lasts forever. That same week, Saad came to the cafe after hours. He threw a document on the counter. I'm buying Zara's share. What? She doesn't know yet. But I'm offering her aunt double the investment value. She's emotionally drained. I'll own this place by next month. My fists clenched. You can't do that. He smirked. Watch me. And just like that, our safe haven was under threat. Zara had just come back. But now we might lose everything. Unless we fight. Unless we rise together. And just maybe, fall in love in the process. If there's one thing life teaches you when you've had nothing, it's how to spot the moment when it's all about to be taken away again. Zara had returned. She stood beside me again, our hands almost brushing as we closed the cafe every night. But something had shifted. Not in us but around us. It was like we were walking across a rope bridge during a storm, trying to balance love, survival, and truth, while something dark kept cutting the ropes beneath us. And now that something had a name, Saad. He had always moved like a man who didn't expect to be questioned. Sharp shoes, sharper words. But now he wasn't just the business partner. He was a threat. The document he dropped on the counter last week was real. Zara's aunt, her only living relative, had quietly agreed to sell her 40% share in the cafe. Saad had outbid Zara. Legally. Ruthlessly. Zara was livid but not surprised. She always wanted me to leave this life behind. She told me one night, as we sat on the rooftop. She never believed this place could be a real future. Just a phase. A rebellion. But it is real, I said gently. She looked at me. You're the only person who believes that. No, I corrected her. I'm the first. In private, Zara began digging into legal options. She met lawyers. Contacted old friends. But everything moved slowly. Too slowly. And in the meantime, Saad grew bolder. He showed up unannounced. Began giving orders to the staff. Started talking to suppliers, as if the cafe already belonged to him. And worst of all, he kept planting seeds of doubt. He's using you, Saad said one morning when I wasn't around. He needs your name. Your space. Your story. You think he'd stay if you lost everything. Zara didn't tell me that right away. But I could feel it. A chill in the way she moved. A pause in her voice when she said my name. Like part of her believed it. and part of her didn't want to. But Saad wasn't the only ghost lurking around. My stepfather was back in Karachi. Not by accident. He wanted something. One night, I returned to the flat above the cafe and found him waiting by the gate, drunk and bitter. "Nice place," he slurred. "All this for free? Who'd you scam this time, Ayan?" I didn't respond. He lit a cigarette, spat on the ground and said, "You think this life will last? People like you were born on the ground. And that's where we stay." I stared at him, silent. Then I said the one thing I'd waited years to say. "I'm not you." Then I shut the door in his face. But words don't always stop the past from chasing you. 2 days later, Zara got a call. From a blocked number. "Your boy used to run scams in Sialkot," the voice said. "He's lying to you." She didn't believe it at first. But she also didn't dismiss it. That's what hurt the most. That night, I walked in to find her staring at her phone, expression unreadable. "I got a call," she said. "I already knew." "I didn't do what they're saying," I said. "I want to believe you, Ayan," she whispered. "But I've believed wrong before." There it was. Not anger. Not accusation. Fear. Fear that she was falling in love with someone who could destroy everything she built. Just like her father did. Just like Saad warned her I would. Meanwhile, business at the cafe began to suffer. Customers noticed the tension. Staff whispered about ownership changes. Reviews started mentioning a shift in atmosphere. Saad was playing a long game and we were running out of time. But then something happened we didn't expect. Aliyah, a former employee of Saad, fired last year after confronting him about harassment allegations. She walked into the cafe one morning, eyes blazing. "I heard what he's doing to you," she told Zara. "And I know what kind of man he really is." She handed over a folder. Emails. Voice recordings. Financial discrepancies. "Use this. Burn him." Zara and I exchanged a look. Hope flickered between us for the first time in weeks. But exposing Saad came with risk. Legal battles. Public backlash. And if we lost, we'd lose everything. That night, Zara stood in the cafe with the folder open on the counter, her hands shaking slightly. "I'm tired, Ayan," she said. "Of fighting. Of doubting everyone. Of being strong just to survive." I stepped closer. "You don't have to be strong alone." Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she leaned into my chest, rested her forehead there. "I don't know how to love without fear." "Then let me teach you," I said. "Day by day." She looked up at me, her eyes stormy, soft and searching. And in that moment we almost kissed. But then the cafe bell rang. And the moment slipped away again. The next day we made our move. We filed for an emergency injunction, using Aliyah's evidence to challenge Saad's claim of majority control. The court agreed to delay any transfer of ownership. 2 weeks of breathing room. 2 weeks to prove Saad was unfit. 2 weeks to win back trust. 2 weeks to show the world that we weren't just survivors, we were fighters. But it wasn't just legal war we were waging. Inside me, another battle raged. I kept waking at night, my chest tight, dreams full of shadows from my past. I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard I worked, I'd always be one step away from losing it all. Zara noticed. "You haven't been writing," she said one night as we closed the register. "I don't feel like I deserve it," I admitted. She touched my hand. "Then write that. Write your fear. Your guilt. Your truth. Don't run from it." So I did. Late at night, I filled pages with every wound I never let breathe. Every lie I was told. Every moment I thought I was worthless. Zara read it all. And one night she looked at me like she finally saw the whole picture. "You never had someone stay long enough to believe in you, did you?" "No," I said. She leaned in, closer than ever before, and whispered, "I'm still here." This time we kissed. And it felt like starting over. But outside, the storm was still gathering. 2 nights before the court hearing, someone broke into the cafe. The register was untouched. The files were missing. The evidence against Saad gone. It was no random break-in. It was war. And we were out of time. The cafe smelled like burnt cinnamon. It was a scent Zara loved, usually. But tonight the air felt heavy. Like something sacred had been scorched. Like a line had been crossed. Because it had. The break-in wasn't just an act of desperation. It was a message. Everything we had gathered against Saad gone. The folder, the recordings, the financial trail erased. And yet the cash drawer was untouched. No money taken. Just truth. That was the theft. Zara stood in the center of the cafe, arms folded, eyes glassy but dry. The last 2 days had hollowed her. I told myself once, she whispered, that if anyone ever tried to take this place from me again, I'd burn it down myself before letting them win. I stood behind her, unsure whether to hold her or let her breathe. Then she turned to me. But I didn't think it would be someone I once trusted. Her voice cracked at that last word. Trust. That's what this war had always been about. Not just business. Not even love. But trust. Would she still trust me to stay standing? Would I still trust myself not to fall apart? We filed a police report, but we both knew how that would go. Karachi had bigger crimes. Louder tragedies. And Saad? He had money, reputation, connections. The kind that made cameras turn off. The kind that made whispers disappear. By morning, the cafe was open again. Because we didn't have the luxury of mourning. Zara wore black as if dressed for a funeral. Maybe she was. Maybe it was the death of what was once her sanctuary. People noticed. Customers paused. Some offered kind smiles. Others stayed quiet, sensing something wrong. But then Saad walked in. As if nothing had happened. He stood at the counter, tall, polished, and venomously calm. Rough night? He asked, flipping through the menu he'd seen 1,000 times. Zara didn't flinch. What do you want? To talk, he said. Privately. She glanced at me. No, I said flatly. You say it here. He laughed softly. You think you've earned the right to sit at this table? Zara stepped in front of me almost protectively. This isn't a negotiation, she said. You broke in. You can't prove that. She tilted her head. Yet. He smiled, amused. You really think you'll win this? Against me. She didn't blink. I don't need to win. I just need to survive you. After he left, Zara collapsed onto the stool behind the counter. I brought her water, but she didn't drink it. He's cornering us, she said quietly. This cafe was my dream. Now it's become my war. It's not just yours anymore, I said. It's ours. She looked up slowly. Then let's act like it. That night, we called a meeting with the staff. We explained everything. The break-in. The legal fight. Saad's moves. And why we might lose everything. I expected silence. Maybe even betrayal. But instead, something incredible happened. Every single staff member stayed. I've worked in 5 places, said Imran, our barista. This is the only one that ever felt like home. You both gave me a second chance, added Farzana, the single mother we hired last spring. I'm not walking away now. Their loyalty didn't fix everything. But it reminded us who we were fighting for. We went to the press next. An anonymous blog published Zara's story, framed carefully to avoid legal blowback. They didn't name Saad. But anyone paying attention would know. The article went viral within hours. She built a sanctuary, and someone tried to destroy it. Suddenly, the cafe was in the spotlight. Local news reached out. A YouTuber covered it. Tweets poured in. Support small businesses. Stand with Zara. Fight the system. But attention brings pressure. And attention brings risk. The next night it happened. Someone threw a brick through the cafe's front window. Zara screamed. We ducked instinctively. Shattered glass rained across the floor like broken stars. I rushed outside, heart pounding, but the street was empty. Just a single note tied to the brick. Go back to where you came from. Before we finish what we started. We didn't sleep. I held Zara's hand as the police came, took another report, and left with expressions that said, don't expect much. Zara sat on the counter. Blood on her palm from a cut. She didn't cry. She just stared at the brick. I built this place brick by brick, she whispered. And now they're throwing them at me. I took her hand gently, wrapped it with a clean towel. You still have me, I said. And I'm not going anywhere. She leaned in. Our foreheads touched. No kiss. No words. Just silence. The kind that binds 2 people too exhausted to speak, but too strong to break. The next morning, Zara's father showed up again. Uninvited. Unapologetic. I saw the news, he said, stepping inside the taped-off entrance. Zara didn't even look up. What do you want, Abba? To talk. Maybe to help. She laughed bitterly. You didn't help when I had nothing. I didn't believe in you then, he admitted. That was my failure. But maybe I can now. She stood slowly, looked him dead in the eye. You don't get to be part of my victory if you weren't part of my war. And then she turned away. That night, I found her crying in the back room. Silent tears. I didn't ask why. I just sat beside her. After a while, she said, I don't want to be strong tonight. I just want to be scared. You can be both, I whispered. And I'll still be here. The next court hearing was 48 hours away. Our final chance to present new evidence. Our last window before Saad gained legal control. We had nothing left to lose. Except each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was everything. The night before the final court hearing, the cafe was closed, the lights dimmed, and the air filled with the quiet hum of survival. Everything we had left was riding on tomorrow. One day. One chance. Zara sat cross-legged on the floor of the back office, surrounded by folders, legal letters, half-drunk cups of tea, and stress she no longer tried to hide. I sat across from her, laptop open, typing out a witness statement we were planning to submit. The staff had gone home. Even the street outside had quieted. But then her phone buzzed. And everything changed. Zara picked it up casually, expecting a message from our lawyer or maybe a support text from an old friend. But the moment she saw the screen, I noticed her hand freeze. Her body stiffened. Her eyes locked on the screen for a full 5 seconds before she slowly turned it around and showed me. It was a video. Sent anonymously. I reached for it, but she pulled it back, hesitating. It says, "Watch before the court kills the truth." We stared at each other. Then she hit play. The video was grainy security camera footage from 2 nights ago. The night of the break-in. At first, it was hard to make out anything beyond the dark silhouette entering through the side door. Head down, hoodie on. But then the person turned toward the camera. And my world cracked. It was Imran. Our barista. The one who stood with us during the staff meeting. The one who said this place felt like home. He wasn't just involved, he was the one who broke in. Zara paused the video, her face blank. No, this doesn't make sense. But it did. It made awful, horrible sense. And it got worse. The video continued. Imran wasn't alone. Someone else stepped into the frame. Zara's aunt. The woman who raised her. The one who had quietly agreed to sell her stake to Saad. There she was, speaking with Imran, handing him what looked like a list. Of what? Zara froze it again. We zoomed in. It was our storage log. A record of all the files and evidence we'd been building for weeks. Her own aunt had helped destroy it all. Zara stood up abruptly, knocking over a cup. Tea spilled across the folders like blood on fresh snow. She sold me out, she whispered. She didn't just sell her shares. She gave him everything. She gave him the means to kill this place. I stood too, reaching for her. We don't know everything yet. Maybe, she pulled away. I trusted her. She raised me. I defended her when people said she was cold. I believed she was protecting me in her own way. She wasn't, I said quietly. She was protecting herself. Zara was silent for a long time. Then she laughed. But it wasn't real. It was bitter, hollow, like the last gasp of someone who's tired of bleeding. I fought so hard to believe I wasn't alone in this world. That someone had my back. First my father abandoned me. Then Saad betrayed me. Now her. Her voice broke. Is it always going to be like this? I walked over slowly and took both her hands. It's not just you anymore, I said. You're not alone. She looked up at me, her eyes stormy. But what if they take everything tomorrow? I didn't flinch. Then we start over. Together. But we both knew what this meant. The witness list we were relying on. Compromised. Our staff testimony. Undermined by Imran's betrayal. The backup evidence we'd hidden in the back office. Also gone. Wiped clean from the flash drive in Zara's desk. Everything we'd built. It wasn't just falling apart. It had been strategically dismantled. The next morning, we sat outside the courthouse, watching people pass. Zara wore the same black kurta from the cafe incident, now pressed and worn like armor. I wore a simple shirt and jeans, the only thing I owned that didn't have history stitched into it. Our lawyer Mira arrived late, red-eyed and tense. "There's something you both need to see," she said, pulling out her tablet. More news. Saad had filed a counter case, claiming emotional harassment, financial sabotage, even defamation. The man who tore our world down was now claiming he was the victim. And the worst part? Imran had signed an affidavit supporting his story. Inside the courtroom, the judge's face was unreadable as the proceedings began. Saad walked in confident, smug. Behind him, Imran sat like a stranger. Zara didn't look at either of them. She stared straight ahead, unmoving, until the judge asked her to speak. She stood slowly, walked to the center and began. "My name is Zara Khalid. I built my cafe from nothing. Not for fame, not for profit, but for freedom. A place where people could come and feel safe. Seen. Heard." She paused, voice steady. "And now that place is being taken from me. Not because it failed, but because I dared to fight back." She turned to look directly at Saad. "I trusted people I shouldn't have. I stayed quiet when I should have screamed. But today, I won't let fear write my story. When it was my turn, I kept it short. I came to this city with nothing. But I found something more powerful than money. I found purpose. And I found her." I glanced at Zara, who nodded subtly. "But if truth can be bought, then none of us are safe." The judge didn't make a ruling that day. He called for one final review of both parties' claims. Another delay. Another week of not knowing whether we still had a future. And as we walked out of the courtroom, the cameras followed. We were suddenly front-page news. But that didn't mean we were safe. Because now Saad had nothing left to lose. And that's when the final blow came. That evening we returned to the cafe, only to find it locked. A notice pinned to the door. "Property under litigation. Temporarily seized." Zara stood frozen. She didn't blink. Didn't cry. She just stepped forward, touched the wood like it was a body she was burying. "This was my mother," she said quietly. "This was the only place I ever felt alive." I stood beside her. "No, Iwisparat. You're alive because you built it. They can take the walls, but they can't take the story." And then I handed her my journal, the one I'd written in since day one. "Start over," I said. But this time not from nothing. A week had passed since the cafe was seized. 7 days of sitting in silence, watching news cycles twist our story into something cheap. 7 days of strangers online taking sides, of friends growing quiet, of lawyers pacing and saying, maybe settle, maybe let go. But letting go was never an option. Not for Zara. Not for me. Because when someone steals your dream, they don't just take bricks and keys. They take your history, your heartbeat, your future. And the only way to take it back? You fight. On the morning of the final hearing, the city felt louder than usual. Zara sat beside me in the cab, dressed in soft blue, hair tied back in a braid that felt like a quiet act of rebellion. She looked calm, but I knew the war waging behind her eyes. She was holding on by threads, but they were steel. "I don't care what happens today," she said quietly. "I just need to speak the truth. One last time." I nodded. "Then speak it like no one can erase it." Inside the courtroom, Saad sat across the aisle, flanked by 2 lawyers and a silent Imran, who hadn't dared to look at us since the last hearing. But today we had something they didn't expect. Mira, our lawyer, stepped up first. "Your Honor," she began, "we request to admit newly recovered evidence, courtesy of digital backup files discovered on a cloud storage service registered to the plaintiff, Ms. Khalid." She handed over a USB drive. Footage. Email threads. Voicemail transcripts. Everything we thought was gone. Zara had backed it up 6 months ago, long before the cafe war even began. She had forgotten she even had it. But destiny remembered. The court reviewed it. Saad's smirk faltered. Then Zara stood. Not with anger, but with clarity. She walked to the center, faced the room and spoke without looking at notes. "My name is Zara Khalid. I built something beautiful. It was never meant to become a battleground. But when you're a woman in this world, sometimes people only listen when you're standing in the fire. She paused. I didn't fight Saad for money. I didn't fight him for revenge. I fought him because silence is what people like him count on. And I won't be silent anymore. Then, to everyone's shock, Zara turned and looked directly at Imran. You lied, she said. You helped them tear down a place you once called your home. Imran stood up slowly. His voice shook. I did it for my sister, he whispered. She was promised a job at Saad's company if I helped. We couldn't afford her medication. The room went quiet. Zara didn't shout. She didn't curse him. She just said softly, you still had a choice. The judge called a recess. An hour later, the verdict came down. Zara's ownership was restored. Saad was fined for misconduct, evidence tampering, and civil harassment. His claim to the cafe? Nullified. The courtroom buzzed with reaction. Zara stared ahead, motionless. It was over. We had won. But victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like survival. Outside, cameras waited. We didn't speak to them. We just walked. Through the courthouse steps. Through the traffic. Through the memory of everything we lost. That night, we returned to the cafe for the first time since the seizure. Glass still boarded. Dust on the counters. Silence in the air. It was more than a space. It was a graveyard and a garden. Zara stood at the threshold. She didn't step in right away. Then finally she whispered, we start again. But not as we were. She turned to me. We do this as partners. Equals. And no more secrets. Ever. I nodded. No more fear either. She smiled faintly. Fear is okay. As long as we walk through it together. And for the first time since we met, she reached for my hand first. We reopened the cafe 1 week later. Slowly, softly, the community came back. Curious, loyal, hopeful. Zara created a wall called Letters to the Dreamers. Anyone could post a note, a drawing, a memory. Within a week it was full. We hired new staff. Imran never returned, but he did leave an envelope at the door one morning. Inside was a note. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to ask for help. Please forgive me when you're ready. Zara read it, then placed it unread on the wall. Everyone has a story, she said, and we're not here to erase anyone's pain, just to grow past it. I spent my nights writing again. Only this time, not just in my journal. Zara encouraged me to publish my story, our story, and soon a small local publisher agreed. Title: I came with nothing, but I wrote my own destiny. It was raw, honest, imperfect, just like us. But then, just when we thought we were finally safe, the final twist came. It was a letter. No return address. No name. Just a single line. The cafe wasn't Saad's only interest. And inside was a photo. A property deed. With Zara's mother's name on it. Zara stared at it. Her hands trembled. That's impossible, she whispered. She's dead, I said. Right. Zara shook her head slowly. I was told she left. I was told she never came back. But this? She looked at me. Eyes wide. Voice shaking. What if they lied? The document Zara held trembled in her hands like a secret that had waited too long to be heard. It was real. Her mother's name. Signed, sealed. On a property deed tied to the very land our cafe was built on. A deed dated just a few months before her supposed disappearance. Zara stared at the page, then slowly sat down on the cafe floor as if the ground was the only thing still holding her up. I don't understand, she whispered. All these years. I thought she left. That she never wanted me. She looked up at me, eyes wide and glassy. What if they lied about everything? We spent the next few days following the only trail we had. The lawyer's signature on the deed. It led us to a small, aging man in Lahore. He remembered Zara's mother clearly. She was a firecracker, he said. Came in alone, pregnant, determined to buy that small plot. She said she was building a life for her daughter. Zara's hands clenched. She was alive? He hesitated. She was. But she was scared. Kept asking how to protect the land if something happened to her. She mentioned someone trying to take it. Someone close. That night, Zara stood on the cafe rooftop again. I always blamed myself, she said. For my father leaving. For my aunt being distant. for my mother disappearing. But it was never about me. It was always about them and their secrets. She looked at me, strong and broken all at once. I'm done running from the truth. I stepped closer. Then let's go find it. We visited Zara's aunt one last time. She opened the door with tired eyes, no makeup and no defense. Zara didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply asked, "Where is my mother?" A long silence stretched. Then her aunt broke. "She was never dead," she said, voice hollow. "She left to protect you. But when she came back, your father had already convinced the world she was mentally unstable. He used the courts to shut her out." Zara staggered. "You knew?" Her aunt nodded, ashamed. "I didn't agree at first. But I was afraid of him. And later, it was easier to stay silent than to explain the truth." Zara didn't speak. She simply walked away. And in that silence she let go. 3 months later, the cafe was thriving again. Not just rebuilt but reborn. It wasn't just coffee and conversation now. It was a healing place. Workshops, open mics, support circles. The Letters to the Dreamers wall had expanded into an entire gallery. Zara launched a fund in her mother's name to help single mothers start small businesses. She called it Mira's Mark. As for me, I published my book. It became a surprise bestseller. People reached out from across the world. Saying the words we'd spoken gave them courage to begin again. But the best moment came when Zara held the first printed copy. She ran her fingers across the cover and whispered, "You didn't just write your destiny. You rewrote mine." One day, a letter arrived at the cafe. No return address. Just a note. "I saw your face in the newspaper. I'm in Quetta. If you want to meet, I'll be waiting near the hills, where the jasmine grows." Zara knew immediately. Her mother. We left the cafe in trusted hands and boarded the next bus. The hills were quiet. The air filled with jasmine and wind. And there, sitting on a bench beneath a flowering tree, was a woman with Zara's eyes and my mother's grace. Zara froze, then walked forward. No drama, no tears. Just two women, finally face to face, after a lifetime of silence. I stepped away to give them space. But I heard it when her mother said softly, "I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to fight for you back then." And Zara replied, "You don't have to fight anymore. I found my way." We stayed in Quetta a few days. When we returned, it wasn't just the cafe that felt different. It was us. We weren't running anymore. We were choosing. 6 months later, under the string lights of the rooftop where it all began, I held Zara's hand. She was in a white kurta with blue embroidery. No makeup. Just her. "I came here with nothing," I told her. "But now I have everything, because I have you." She smiled through tears. "I wrote my own destiny. And in every page you're there." I knelt. And this time, it wasn't to beg the universe. It was to ask her to walk beside me forever. She said yes. The story wasn't perfect. But it was ours. Messy. Honest. Hard one. A story of two people who didn't wait to be saved. They saved each other.